Thank you for tuning in to the World Builder's Anvil, episode 268, Gaming Brainstorming.
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the muck of Java and build. Welcome back. Bored as always. My name is Jeffrey W. Ingram. That lame title. I don't know where you came up with that from.
You made me take that title. Excitedly yours. I am Michael Miller. Excited for multiple reasons. One being we are in the Northbound Sinkhole Studios today.
Yes, I was gonna say the battle worn. Yes, no. Michael lost his car actually in a giant sinkhole that formed in my driveway.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I can throw a rope down and pull it out. It's not a large car.
Yeah, luckily it's light. We think we can just lift it out. So.
I think we can do it. We winch it out, attach it to the garage and just pull it out. Yeah, Jeff has a big hole in his driveway, which is sad. But I'm here in person with Jeff today, so this is exciting. This is fun. We have another ramshackle episode for you guys today. We had a couple of ideas for shows and decided to forego those for the moment because Jeff is excited about a concept and we're going to run with it. So,
I've talked about this a little bit briefly on the show, and essentially. With the sinkhole, currently eating up my editing budget, I'm starting on this project next.
Do you want to mention the like a little update, or because I feel like we kind of owe the audience an update?
Yeah. So essentially, my budget every time I have a budget for editing, my budget goes away because of a new roof or now a sinkhole in my driveway. So
this is something that you guys probably face too, or you will face, like just life getting in the way, and you got to be patient and take your time. Like your first book is done. Your second book is
the second and third book of the trilogy are all written at this point. So essentially, it's to the expensive part of getting them edited. That we have to leave.
Right, just a moment. We have an interruption. I'm gonna get the door. We have a visitor in the studio. One of Jeff's cats insisted on coming in and saying hello to you guys. And I have a feeling she's going to go right back out.
Probably go to the bathroom on Michael's jacket for closing.
I hope she doesn't go to the bathroom on my jacket. So yeah, the basic gist is Jeff has his books written, and literally we have mentioned like, in X amount of months, the book will be available, or next year the book will probably be available. And right now we're just stuck in a limbo with editing, which stinks because I feel we've been teasing the audience with it for 2 years now. 2 years.
Yeah. So it's kind of on the back burner. Just
it's still coming, guys. I will I will crack the whip and make sure that it's still. The cat is now up. Boo! What are you doing? The cat's literally right in front of me, right in front of the microphone.
Exciting as always. Okay, so what's the concept that got you excited that we're talking about today? So originally, there's this idea of, and we talked about this briefly before. I got this software for Christmas, I believe, called RPGMaker, and it's essentially you literally buy it on Steam. It's very low-level entry point into creating role-playing games, old JRPG style.
Okay, so not like tabletop, like for video game.
Yeah, and this idea could be used for both. Yes, Boo.
The cat is now between Jeff and the microphone.
That makes this easier. Okay, so the idea is there's a period of time in my world, and I kind of know what happens, but I don't know the details. Something I like to talk about, and it was when the orcs controlled the arm of the world. There was a human revolt, and I wanted to start telling the story of the beginning of that. So essentially, it's called the working title is called the Dirge of the. I forget how many tribes there are. The Draco tribes, there are like 5 or 7. So it's the Dirge of the Tribes because they're kind of at their bottom at the beginning of the story.
Now, I've heard that word before, but what does that word even mean? Dirge. What is a dirge?
A dirge is like an old school, like Middle Ages poem that is sad. It's a sad poem.
So like the sad poem of the seven tribes is kind of what the title means.
I think a dirge typically means more like a song type of poem too.
Okay, so like a sonnet sort of thing.
Yeah. So the idea was at the beginning of the game is sort of at their base. They are at this point completely under the control of orcs. Mm-hmm. They're literally, there's an enclave where the seven tribes, they're all human rulers in the area except for the overlord, which is an orc. But all of the human rulers are actually representatives of the tribes. All of the last vestiges of the old tribal ways and the last bits of the old kingdom of Batrachus all exist in essentially what you would say is like one county today in the context of England. So a very relatively small space. And essentially it's surrounded by massive mountains on three sides. And there's a lake because of the flooding from the mountains. It's not in the windward side of the mountains. So a lot of water pools down into a lake in the middle of this. So there's a lot of fresh water. And like literally it starts a river, which lets out in the city of Klein Forest. And Michael would better know as Highwall. So it's literally on the mountainside away from Highwall. And so it's an interesting tale because it's the story of why and how the human revolt starts and how we get from the old Badrachim ideas to the new idea of a kingdom without a king. And kings are really a bad word, even though most lords try and become them. In general, the people and most of the nobility who have no chance of becoming king think kings are really bad ideas. And it kind of goes back to before this period, but it's the beginning of the kingdom of Grabatus, which it's where my books take place is, and actually some of the characters that get mentioned in the books in a historical context, actually this is when they're doing their thing. So this is sort of like the founding fathers of Grabatus getting together and sort of how they got to the ideas of where they are and a little bit of the story. So it's mainly going to be a role-playing game, JRPG style, which Michael's told me he'll do all the playtesting for me.
Be happy to. So while that was a fun history lesson for Gardul, mostly what we're talking about today is actually we're brainstorming what to put in this video game, how he wants to go about building this game. So
one of the interesting things is the character, the protagonist in the story who you're playing. So the presumed protagonist is actually essentially what would be in English terms like a count. As pretty significant, people. He has some people who've sworn allegiance to him, but not by no means a really powerful lord. And but you take his place. So, and part of this might be dreaming. I'm not even sure if this is capable in the software. And I have to actually figure out the math on how to do it because obviously if you do it in a video game, you need a system for it. So I'm kind of developing the system first. I figure if nothing else, I can use it for role-playing games tabletop. So I'll probably design it sort of in Excel or some such thing to start off with to make sure the math works.
Bye, Boo.
We're glad we could service you today.
Oh, I thought she's actually just moving to the third chair at the table. She's decided to be just a contributor. I thought she was about to hop down though.
So the thing that would interest me and some games have done this in the past where you build a castle. And that part itself does not interest me so much. It's nice to have that kind of stuff, but it's more the idea of if I control this land, one, I should derive wealth from it. But then I get additional problems in game because of it. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to get all of this stuff in there, but I wanted to brainstorm like around those three areas. And this might come back and be multiple episodes because I don't know how long this is going to take. But the idea is in most things very late Middle Ages, probably post Middle Ages even, lords, kings, emperors, and their vassals would always, life was war. And there might be small wars, there might be big wars, but it was pretty much you're constantly at war. So it's this idea of where your land, your domain, battles and wars sort of play with each other. But what would be interesting sort of secondary kind of mini games in there that could be added in a sort of flat screen, not simulator games, but sort of very light simulation ideas for those ideas where war is simple to role play out in stories because you just say this city is now this territory. But battles and domains, where you got to take your 6 characters out, you're not fighting entire armies. So how you deal with like the larger battles within the context of a game like that, but keep it interesting for the people who are playing it, where it's not too heavy. And we've talked about this game before in the past. Suikoden had a battle system in their games, and it was pretty much rock paper scissors, which to me isn't necessarily bad. I think a lot of games do that, and it's simple. And so if I end up doing battles, it might be something along the lines of a rock, paper, scissors with maybe a few additional implements in there. But, is one, could you break it up into terms like and this is kind of where I need your help. We'll start with battles here. If you've ever played a war game or most strategy games, they come in sequences. So you have... and in every game, it's different, the sequences or whatever. But, it's like you typically, you move, you take actions in a certain sequence with all of the other players. And can you accomplish that same thing in a simple way, which still doesn't make it too complicated for the people who aren't there to play a strategy game, but to add just a little bit more to make rock, paper, scissors a bit more interesting?
Well, are you saying like... So you guys can't see this, but Jeff has a bunch of things written down in a notebook here. On one page, he has a triangle, like the 3 main tenets of the game are going to be domain, battle and war. So are we talking about the battle layer?
Just the battle layer. Right?
Okay. If the battle layer is going to be what in a standard RPG would be your random fights, like
not the fights that you're in. That kind of happens over top of it. It's so like in Suikoden, when you would go do the battle, and it would be... So
you want it to be that,
but interesting. Or
okay.
Yeah.
If it's... My point is, if...
it's not the characters going around fighting. That would be classic JRPG.
Right. But what I'm saying, I'm trying to figure out how frequently it's going to occur in the game. And, like, is this going to be something you're doing all the time or just once in a while? You know what I mean?
Probably not much. This is not an epic story. This is the beginning of a revolt, and it's a minor revolt against a local lord. It's not the major revolt freeing up the kingdom.
Okay, but I'm not talking story. I'm talking mechanics. So, like, how frequently do you think you'll be playing in battles?
Probably a handful of times, I would assume.
Okay, so about as frequently as in Suikoden.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're, for those of you unfamiliar, we're referring to a JRPG that is one of Jeff and my favorite RPGs from back on the original PlayStation, or PlayStation 2? Original PlayStation was the first one. For the first 2 were on the original PlayStation, yeah. So anyway, I still have them both. If you're gonna do it as frequently as in that game, my thought is, and you want it to be more complicated because that was very much, it was almost exactly rock, paper, scissors. I think there were 4 things you could do. It was like cavalry, archery, there might have been spells, and then defense, I think. Something like that. What I would say is, would you be willing to do something that is as complicated, but it's not crazy complicated, as something like an XCOM or an Advanced War, where once you get into the battle, it's a strategy mini game, basically.
Now, I thought about that. My one issue with that is It loses the realism, or not really the realism, but the idea that it's like armies going to war. Because in those games, it's always like unit versus unit. And it might be unit versus entire army, you know. In some of the battles, it felt that way in XCOM 2. You know, so you have your 3 guys who can't die, and there's like 8,000 enemies on the board, which luckily don't come at you at once. And I believe you can pull that off in the software. And here's my thought, and it's the idea of, and you get this in strategy games where it's like you have move, you know, like declare, execute. It is very generically what happens in most strategy games, right? Where so at each level of those, you have like, say, a rock paper scissors type of choice, and then each of those build modifiers off, and then essentially it has effects on the troop count. So maybe it's you know, screen wise, it's probably not too impressive. You know, it's like Army 1 and Army 2. You have 100 troops and they have 100 troops at the beginning. You go through these things. Each one modifies what happens. The result is sort of rock, paper, scissors at multiple levels. And so then you lose 5% of your troops. You're down to 95. They lose 10%. They're down to 10. You might have morale. You have other things wrapped in there.
Well, what you're talking about right there is very much like what happens in Suikoden.
There was multiple levels?
There wasn't multiple levels, but you would do a given thing, and then their troop count would get adjusted, and your troop count would get adjusted accordingly. So what you're saying is basically you just want modifiers on top of that system.
Well, yeah, because here was my idea, and I'll just run through it quickly. So essentially, it's like battles, to me, especially in old days, happened in phases. So you'd have tactical movement where your army's moving through the field towards your whatever your strategic objective is. Then when you start coming close to the enemy, you hopefully know this, you start to position, and each of you try and position for the best ground. So that would be like a second phase. But it's like you might try and rush the high ground, so you get the high ground in the battle, because that will give you advantage in the fight. But they might rush the high ground, and it might not work out the way you expect. And so at each effect, you might have little skirmish type of fights, which could actually maybe even be played out as battles, like JRPG battles or whatever. But putting that aside, that was just an additional thought right now. Then you go into what your battle plan is. We're going to do an all-out attack. We're going to defend. Your classic rock, paper, scissors battle there based off of troop composition. And then you have an engagement where you fight. You can make adjustments. You can shift from the high ground to the low ground or whatever. You're trying to. There would have to be a positioning game too. Because it's about position, but I don't know. I think I'm overthinking that. So
maybe. What if for every given battle, like, you know, it's like, okay, at the beginning of the battle, you have a choice. You have 3 things that you can do. Your average game, it's just going to be, you know, attack, defend, or move. Let's keep it simple for the sake of conversation. What if in your game, every time you got to a battle, those first 3 choices changed? So there might be attack, defend, whatever, but
you might not have the choice due to the positioning in the landscape and whatever. So there might be an option to, you know, attack their archers, seek high ground, or, you know, get behind their cavalry. So like those are your choices. None of them are bad choices. You just don't know which ones are going to pan out better than others. Something bad, it'll affect the engagement.
Exactly. But if they don't choose something that's directly in counter to yours, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're automatically going to get an advantage. You're just going to get the position that you wanted, which may or may not be the best position for the following turn.
Because of what they chose.
Right. So you could tailor each battle specifically to like the story. So i.e. here comes the story, and the story puts you, you know, in this marsh. For some reason they're going to be fighting in this marsh. So now the landscape becomes an important, you know, element in the fight, and you can tailor the choices accordingly. They could still simply be on the mechanics end in the background running exactly the same as attack, defend, or move. But in this circumstance, the wording is differently, giving you a sense of story and layer.
This battle is different than that battle.
Exactly.
That's interesting. And here's the other thought too is, and maybe this becomes overcomplicated. And once again, I don't even know what this software is completely capable of because this is outside of the scope of a JRPG. Is troop composition, because this is one thing that was bothered me in most strategy games I've ever played. Is you're kind of forced to fight with whatever troop setup is allowable within the mechanics of the game. Which obviously this game will have
limits
too.
Right.
The thing is, it's like you couldn't go archer heavy if you're playing a game that does not allow that. But this thing is give you a little bit more flexibility on the makeup of your units, heavy versus light. Your manpower, mercenary availability. And this is kind of where the layer of the domain comes into it, where based off of your manpower and your money, maybe you can create a little bit different distribution where you have more heavy infantry or more cavalry than you would have to have if you play the game in a different way. And so you could sort of tailor your army, but I don't know if it would be worth it just in the simple fact where you're talking about a handful of battles in a game. How much time do you want to spend thinking about that to do that? So it's like something that is interesting to my geek number side person, but I don't know if it's really realistic, because the idea is if I can figure out how to do all this stuff here, I come back with the subsequent game, which is the beginning of the big fight back against the orcs. The actual revolution, to try and overthrow the orcs. And there'd be a lot more battles. And part of this too, part of the role-playing elements of this game is court intrigue. And so, and kind of this game is figuring out sort of how to scale that out if you can do it. So,
court intrigue, as in social political conversations that are positioning you to be in power or gain influence.
Yeah.
You could have that system mirror the battle system, except be social. So that your choices are very similar, like the application.
The battle of diplomacy.
Exactly. So you say you're going to choose this, you're going to choose this, you're going to choose this, and then the dialogue pops up based on which thing you choose. Not unlike the way BioWare has done some of the what do you call it? Some of the what's the big space one? Brain farting on the name. I can see the character. Commander Shepard. Seriously, you don't know the game I'm talking about? Yeah. The huge. It was Andromedon was the after the full trilogy. Why can't I remember the name of this game? You're looking at me like you know it, and you're just torturing me. You really don't. I have to look this up. It's going to drive me insane.
Your job is to know all things pop culture for the show. We're talking about my trivial Achilles heel. My trivia Achilles heel.
It's oh my gosh! Hang on. I got to look this up. I'm going to lose my freaking mind here. I'm just going to type in Commander Shepard. Mass Effect. Oh, thank you. Mass Effect.
Never heard of it.
You've never heard of Mass Effect?
No.
Do you own Mass Effect?
Actually, I do not own Mass Effect, but I have heard of Mass Effect.
Okay. Well, in Mass Effect, a lot of the dialogue options were because they try to have the dialogue get delivered in relatively real time, so that the option to choose dialogue there would be this little dialogue circle. And it would just have like a 1 or 2 word description of what you were going to say. And it was just kind of like the feeling of what you're going to say, like aggressive or sincere or, or angry. So you would kind of pick that thing. And then he would say like 4 or 5 sentences that kind of responded in the way that you guided it. So you could do that. You could absolutely do that in text, like no problem.
Yeah. Most definitely, because one of the interesting things too is, and this is the idea of where the three come together. Because at the domain level, that's where a lot of the core intrigue is happening. You're trying to gain the support, because this is always the issue, right? The other human lords don't naturally support you or your ideas, and I think the fork in the game, where hopefully if I can do this in the game, well, once again, I just don't know enough to know what I can pull or not pull off in the software, is, do you go the route that, they did in my world, which is you go towards the kingdom with no king, or do you try and become king again? Because I think that's an interesting question, There are benefits and drawbacks to both, which would have to come out in the game. But I want that kind of an optional way for you to play 4, but you're trying to gain the support of the human lords to overthrow essentially what you would call a duke, like in English terms, the guy in charge of the area plus other areas. And
so is he the big bad in this storyline?
He's the big bad in this storyline.
Okay. But it doesn't sound like he would be super politically powerful. He sounds like he'd be medium power compared to everybody else. Like he'd be on the same level as a lot of other guys, no?
In the context of the Orcish empire, yes. But the thing is...
Oh, we're talking an orc duke, not a human duke.
An orc duke.
Oh, okay, right. Gotcha.
And so he's the one they're fighting against.
Fair enough.
And you're trying to overthrow an orc duke while not having the orc essentially, it's not called emperor, but we'll just call him emperor here for simplicity's sake, go, oh, you're rebelling against orcs.
Okay, so
even though you're probably ultimately long-term planning to rebel against orcs.
But you don't want their attention right now because you can't handle it. So the idea is to just take care of this one guy, this one problem of orcs right now and be like, oh, sorry, like we don't want to pick a fight with all y'all. We just have a problem with this one dude.
That's right.
Like we don't want all-out war yet.
That's right. I mean,
pardon me.
Yeah. So and that's kind of the idea of the story right there, very briefly, and then, and I see like the idea of where a lot of like the quests come from, or well, we've had a battle. The results of the battle were we lost, but now I need to delay the enemy because they're people, and we need to get our troop strength back to where it needs to be. So let's go raid this area.
Conscript a bunch,
conscript some people and actually, distract this guy over here to give us time to raise more forces and become more. Because essentially, in the way it typically worked, and it won't be exactly this, is like all of the other lords in the area put together are about the same strength as this guy. So, if you can pull off all of his underlings to rebel against him, you have a fair fight. If you can't do that, or if you have to blow up some of them, you're not going to be at his troop strength. So you're going to need something else to get past this guy. Plus, the orcs fight differently than the humans, too. And that's kind of the reason why they're in charge now, is because of the way they fight. It's Mongols. They're much faster. They shift, mounted and attack mounted, and they don't necessarily stay to fight, where the humans are more European-style warriors who were standing our ground and... Okay, they shot us with arrows, and now
it's our turn.
Now they're running away. Okay.
No, come back. It's our turn.
That's right. We're going to hit you now. And
no, we don't want to get hit, so we're going to skip that part.
And I do think definitely to a degree that a lot of it's going to be sort of sculpted because there aren't going to be a lot of scenes. But in a way, I want to see if I can scale it out so I can make something a little bit bigger along that line. What was this? Okay. I figured that'd be simpler. Okay. But okay, and we'll probably along the way do some build stuff in here, like on the show. Mm-hmm. Build out some of the elements here, just idea wise. But and kind of what I'm doing here too is I talked about this on the show. It's about finding your frame. So and part of this I want to do some research in the software to see how much programming can I do in the software to go above and beyond where it does. Mm-hmm. I'm sure with screens, I could probably put together things that, maybe don't look great, but I can pull it off in. So,
well, I think that the concept of this project is a fantastic.
It might be too big for the first one.
Well, it might be, but what I was about to say is I think it's a fantastic example of framework building, because the thing that's great about like some of those old games is you can create something and deliver what you want to deliver in an idea even though mechanically it's so much more simple than what than what the player experiences or what your audience experiences. I know that if I were to go back and play a lot of the old games that I really love, that I'd be like, wow, is this really what it was like? Because in my memory, it lives completely differently.
Well, I think that's the difference too. Is the idea is if you have these battles, it's like you want the feeling of groups of people coming together and fighting, but at the same time is if you're really doing all the math on that, why not just like create a Total War clone or something like that, which isn't where I want to go. And but I kind of want some of the feelings of having the troops and being in charge, and some of the benefits of having the money come in from the peasants, but then go, wait, they're not paying me taxes here. What do I do? Sort of the moral questions, put on you some of the dilemmas that a lord might run into, but in the context of today, you have a different morality. Back then, there's no question what would probably happen. You're paying your taxes.
I wonder how you can set it up, because it would be like, all right, is a layer of the game going to be your old school RPG where you're wandering around, there's random encounter? Okay, so that will still be part of the game. A lot
of the war element is going to be that, where you're doing things for strategic advantages, which hopefully if I can store it in the game, then maybe you get a little bit of a buff here, a little bit of a buff here. You get a little bit more troops than you should have because you delayed the other person. And I actually even kind of see that the intro of the game feeling like you're in the pitched battle. But I don't want to give too much of the story away. But I don't. Here, if you listen to the show, you might get a little bit more than you would anywhere else.
So if you're going to have part of the game where that is a part of the game, I'm wondering how you can set up like a passage of time so that while you're playing the game, every now and then you have to check in with the diplomacy aspect of the game. So it's not just simply gated based on what you're doing.
Because we don't want to force you back to the domain.
There's got to be, like, you can't just be, I'm just gonna grind up my characters for 5 or 6 days.
We're just at level 999.
Right. I want to
do the story.
Right. I want to get my guys really powerful. There should be something that forces you to make decisions on the diplomacy side of things, so that you can't just get one side, or maybe you can do all that grinding, but if you don't pay attention to the diplomacy side, having your characters super powerful isn't going to help you.
Yes, your 6 really powerful characters can't defeat the
4,000. Exactly. It's like you still need the vassals on your side. You know what I mean? So you still need.
Well, that's one of the interesting things too.
And that can be missions too. Like, it's like, oh well, this vassal has.
I want this to be a game that you can win and lose. So it's like, okay, you make it to the end of the game, but you don't have the troop strength to possibly win because you went into all of the other vassals and blew them up to get control of their lands. Now the Lord's coming down at you and you don't have the troop strength to fight them.
Right. Or you could have a case where you defeat the Lord, but because of the way you went about it, you've angered the Emperor. Yeah. So like you've won, in quotes, but...
And now there's an army of 100,000 coming.
Exactly. Right. So ultimately, you're going to get wiped out anyway. So congratulations. Like, that could be an ending. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I kind of want to have a couple different endings. Not a lot. And I probably shouldn't do multiple endings because I've never attempted this kind of thing before. But the software, JRPG-wise, the game will be there. And it will have at least the illusion of these elements.
Does it have like all the enemies already built into the game? Like there are RPG makers where there's a lot more resources that are free.
There are resources you can get for free and attached to it. There are a lot of monsters in there already.
Okay, so there are monsters.
There are.
Okay.
You can actually build out characters' faces and stuff like that. So.
I assume you're going to try to go with a bunch of ones that do fit in your world and remove the ones that don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a JRPG. They all look just, weird.
Well, I know, but I imagine they also have that, like, giant wolves and, bugbears and, I imagine there are some things that fit.
There are some things that fit. When it comes to the monsters thing, my world really doesn't work that way. So that part's going to be a bit cheesed, but because, there will probably be wandering slimes or some such thing for you to fight.
Kind of have to.
Just to give you some variety of monster. Otherwise, really, in Garduel itself, if you're doing tabletop, most of your foes are going to be human.
Yeah.
Or wolf, or, and the thing is, I probably won't have the time or the resources to build out 10,000 different looking human bad guy enemies. So,
well, I mean, you could have like, say, 10 to 20 different factions and have
their own look
but my point is have those be
an evil
the dominant number of random encounters you get into might be world appropriate.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, this is a beholder. Why am I fighting a beholder?
The hope is to have it world specific, but a lot of it's going to be on just time to do.
Yeah.
So, like I said, there will be some generic orc things definitely. Some generic human things definitely. And if I get a bunch of those, I'll eliminate most of the monsters. Because really, and you've played my worlds, there aren't a lot of like monsters, monsters.
Yeah, you don't get a lot of that encounters like that.
But there are some.
Depends on where you are.
It depends where you are, and in this area there are some really nasty ones, which I don't think you've ever met.
I don't think I have.
I
think the only thing I ever remember, but I don't. But this was in a different age. Was the demon, the chaos demon there?
Oh, the phalanx demon.
The phalanx demon. Yeah. That's really the nastiest thing that I ever remember hearing about.
Yeah. And were you around in those games?
I was around in those games. I don't think I fought in that fight. I don't think I was there for that fight.
Because that was a really epic fight where I think like the entire party, and they were pretty leveled in D&D terms at the time, even though it was not D&D. But GURPS wise, they were really a skillful party at that point, and they could not kill it. And like essentially the tank of the group was one of our friend Ian's character, and he literally was trying to hang on to this thing as it's flying away, and it left, and so they defeated it, but it was not like they did not kill it.
They didn't kill it,
and they went all out on this thing as hard as they could, but it's designed to be a force of nature,
relatively unkillable.
Yeah, it's like literally, it's like he was grabbing a hold of it, right? The problem is up and down all of the, I don't know what you call that, the lines of the body are spines with venom that are corrosive. His character was really stubborn though, so
so he's like, grab it, like it's poisoning you.
Yeah,
it hurts like crazy.
You're dissolving.
You're dissolving. Your hands are dissolving.
Luckily, as it started to fly away, it's like he failed his health check and fell unconscious. So it wasn't when he was like 100 feet away up in the air.
Right.
Because it was going on to its next thing, and they drove it off, but like it literally almost killed and it was, and you remember the tables back at that time, I probably have 6 or 8 people.
Yeah, there was a lot of people.
So, but it's like, yeah, there will be, I don't have a plan to put that in this game. I don't know how to represent that and give it due and make it fair. But
well, maybe it's like one of those things where we were talking about this, where you're playing a game and then like Drist happens to pop up in a random encounter, like you know what I mean?
Something like
maybe it's like
like a wizard with like this thing trapped,
or like you're arriving in.
If you kill me, you will release the demon I've summoned.
Right, or like you arrive in a town just as it's destroying, and it's like, oh my gosh, we need to do something. Where'd it go? And the townsfolk are like, oh, you can help us. Oh wait, it's leaving.
Oh, we're all dead.
It's leaving. It's leaving.
Thanks for coming.
Welcome. Would you like to buy things from my shop?
I love that in games. That's awesome. Oh, the town's burning. Oh yes. Let's see what you have to sell.
What would you like to buy? I'm sorry. I still need to make a buck. I got to put food on the table. My kids can't starve.
My kids get ready to go to college. Don't even know what that is. Okay, so I think that's all for this episode. This is something I think we're going to come back to intermittently. It won't be quite as broad or as general as this, but this is I'm really trying to get my wheels wrapped around this. And there might be some, like maybe Roll20, some kind of online tabletop game where I start experimenting with some of the settings. If you're interested in doing those, I don't have a Patreon set up yet. So go to facebook.com/groups/Undercroft, hang out there, and maybe, I'll be looking to flesh out a table on something like maybe Roll20. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it will be friends, and some of it will, be seats for other people just to get feedback. So,
and
I'd rather have the ideas fleshed out and people like them before I try to figure out how to build them.
And just a quick little preview, we're a couple of episodes coming up soon. We're going to be doing another build episode soon. We're going to be doing another tabletop campaign soon. We've got some cool ideas for that. And wasn't there something else that we were thinking about in the near future?
I'm sure.
You don't have anything else you want to drop right now? No. Okay. Well, I guess that's it. Thanks for listening, guys.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.